you, Claire. So once again, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexandra Pankala. I'm Customer Success Manager here at Researchfish, and welcome everyone to our Interoperability Uploader Function and Researcher Records Best Practices webinar. Before we will start, we can make a short introduction. The webinar will be run by our product manager, Colin. Colin, would you like to introduce yourself as you will be running the webinar?
Thank you, Alex. Well, we'll all be running it together, but I will be engaging in the live demo, which is always super exciting. But as Alex has said, I'm product manager at Elsevier. I focus on Researchfish, and very pleased to have you all come along and find out a bit more about our interoperability and CRIS integration capabilities today. I'll ask my other colleagues to introduce themselves. Gavin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes.
Sorry, is my sound coming across a bit awkwardly?
Yes, your sound is coming across okay.
It's coming across okay. Okay.
Yeah. So hello, my name is Gavin Reddick. I'm the chief analyst here at Researchfish. So my team look after all things analytic-y and data-y. Particularly interested in interoperability. Colin's going to do the presentation today, but I'll be around and may answer some questions later on. So with that, I'd like to let my colleague Claire introduce herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Claire Wooding. I'm from the Researchfish customer success team. So our team looks after kind of clients, funders, research organisations using the system and best practices around data collection.
Okay. So with that then, unless there's anything else, Alex, Claire or Gavin, I'm going to start with a few slides. Let's make sure I'm appropriately sharing. So hopefully everybody can see just an introduction slide. Okay, let's just get my controls up. So yeah, so thank you again for joining. Just as a reminder, today's session is being recorded, and it will be shared afterwards for those who are registered and made available on the Researchfish public YouTube channel. A link will also be shared in the next newsletter, and we'll send a link in the follow-up email to registered attendees. So just to quickly recap the format, I'm going to give a quick little overview just so that hopefully you have a sense of the end-to-end process. Then we'll do a live demonstration using Researchfish. And then there'll be time for Q&A at the end. Please do put your questions into the Q&A. I'm aware people are muted, so if we answer one of your questions, we may unmute to ask you to sort of help us to understand and see whether we've actually answered your question properly. After this webinar, or rather at the end, I'll splash up a little bit of information about further help. But for those of you who are our clients, you can reach out to I think to everybody, you can reach out to rfclientsupport@elsevier.com. We'll make sure to drop that email address into the chat. I've lost my screen. That's better. Okay. So we've introduced ourselves. There's a lot of people signed up today, which is really great to see. Great to see the level of interest. We know from the registration process that we have people here from research organizations who don't yet have any access to the Researchfish platform. We have people with access, but different levels of access, and people with different levels of experience of the RO interoperability capability that we're going to demonstrate. Some people have used it many years ago and therefore may not be familiar with the recently introduced extensions to that capability that we did last year. So I'm going to need to sort of try to address the needs of everybody. So I'm going to start especially for people who previously or have no current access to the Researchfish platform and aren't familiar with us, just a very quick one slide to give an overview of our two subscription options for research organizations. So the light option is available to all research organizations at no cost. It enables basic submission management to be able to track and manage your researchers' activity in reporting to their funders. It has the RO interoperability capability that we're going to demonstrate today. So that is the ability to bring records from your CRIS system or other similar systems into Researchfish to avoid researchers having to report them a second time. And that's, as I say, the focus of the webinar. There is also a pay-for subscription called Administrator, and this will give you access to more advanced submission management capabilities, Importantly, it provides access to the Researchfish data entered by researchers at your institute, and it provides a number of improved administration capabilities, including workload allocation, adding metadata to awards for grouping and filtering within the Researchfish platform. It also enables a data integration to have data from Researchfish be exported and imported into CRIS or similar systems. So, as I say, the focus of this webinar is going to be on the R interoperability capabilities, which we also refer to as CRIS integration, since very often CRIS systems are the ones that are commonly interoperating with. And as you'll see, this is available to all research organizations. So if you don't have access to Researchfish, you can drop us a note and we can go through a verification process to get you set up with a free subscription. You can either drop an email to that email address I mentioned earlier, rfclientsupport, or one word, elsevier.com, or there will be a short post-webinar feedback survey. We'd like to get a bit of feedback on how this went. Did we meet your goals? How can we do it differently in the future? How can we improve things? And there'll be an opportunity there if you wish to express your interest in being signed up either with the Lite subscription, or if the administrator subscription is something that you're interested in, you can express your interest there and one of the team will follow up with you. Okay, so why are we doing this and what is it? So a key goal of Researchfish is to reduce the reporting burden on researchers. And one way we can do this is to ensure that outcomes reported into other systems can be brought into Researchfish with minimal effort by researchers. So we do this we have several different mechanisms. We have a series of harvesting mechanisms. So we pull information from sites like Crossref, PubMed, Scopus, Web of Science, OpenAir, DataCite. We have what's called personal harvesting. So that's where we pull information from sites like ORCID, or we make use of Scopus author IDs. And the outcomes that come via personal harvesting, they don't have the grant attribution information. So we create the outcome and the researchers then say which grant had funded that research. And then we have the R interoperability. And so that allows research organization administrators to add outcomes from CRIS systems or other similar systems into Researchfish on behalf of researchers. Now, if your institute has an OpenAir connector, or if you mint DataCite DOIs, then we will already be harvesting from these repositories. But it may still you may still want to make use of the R interoperability because the grant attribution information can come into Researchfish, and that saves them some reporting effort. And to give you a sense of the the amount of time that we're talking about and the effort saving we're talking about here, we know it takes a researcher around 70 seconds per publication that they add into Researchfish. Now, obviously, the amount of time is very variable depending on whether they use one of our many publication search integrations or if they add the details manually. But this can give you a sense of the scale of the time saving that you can make by bulk adding records into Researchfish on behalf of your researchers. I probably should have been building that out as it went. So what we're going to focus on today is two main areas of functionality within Researchfish. The uploader itself, which is the mechanism that brings records into Researchfish. And then we're going to introduce or introduce to you something called researcher records, which support this process. So just a little bit of further information to set the scene. To be able to bring records into Researchfish, they need to have a persistent ID, so either a Crossref DOI or a PubMed ID, and we use those for publications. If you make use of DataCite DOIs are also supported. That was an extension to the work we did last year, or part of the work we did last year, and that supports not just publications, but various other outcome types to allow for the importing of audiovisuals and images, datasets and software into Researchfish and to be added in against the relevant common outcome types. We also then need to be able to link these outcomes to Researchfish and to entities in Researchfish. So either we need to know for the publication, we need to know the funder and the grant, and that allows us to attribute the publication directly to the grant, which a researcher holds. But often the CRIS system or other system doesn't have this information, but you do know who the person is. So what you can do instead is you can associate it with a researcher. And then they can decide and indicate which of their grants funded the research. And that's going to be the researcher record. To give you a sense, again, sort of trying to hopefully build a picture here, you're going to create, if you make use of the interoperability capability, you'll create a spreadsheet of publications. And along with, so obviously we can see here, we've got some DOIs and some PubMed IDs, but we've also got some other information. And so the information we've got here is information about the funder and the grant. And so with this information, the interoperability process is able to find a matching grant in Researchfish, and it will add the publication and attribute it to the grant, and it will also then be part of the researcher's personal portfolio so that they can use it elsewhere if they want to. But sometimes you don't have the information about the grant. So instead, what you do is you can create effectively a placeholder within Researchfish for each researcher, and it's an ID. And we call them researcher records. And it's got a little bit of extra data. We'll see that as we go. But by adding a row into this table and indicating that this row 6 here for this particular publication referenced by this DOI, it should be associated with a researcher who holds a researcher record with this ID. And that allows us to, again, import the publication into Researchfish, attribute it to the person's portfolio. Now, we don't have the grant information, so they'll need to add the grant and the funding information themselves, do the attribution themselves, but the record creation can get done. So to give you a sense of the end-to-end workflow, data entry will be happening by either yourselves or by your researchers into your CRIS system. There's a little workflow to create these researcher records. And then when that's done, what you'll do is you'll pull down information from Researchfish about the awards, and you'll pull information from your CRIS system about the outcomes. And then you'll do an exercise to match awards, because if you have award references here, they'll need to match with Researchfish, so you may need to do some matching. If you don't have information about the grant awards, you'll add in information about the researchers, and then you'll upload into Researchfish. And there's a mechanism to basically review the upload process and adjust if there were any errors, and adjust if needed. And this results in the outcomes being added to Researchfish accounts and attributed to grants where we have that information. The process for creating researcher records, which is the first one I'm going to start at. So this was just the yellow box on its own, but to simplify things, I've broken it out because it's a separate process. And this is a relatively straightforward process. You create a list of your researchers who are going to be using Researchfish to do reporting. You add those into Researchfish, which will create researcher records, and invitations are then sent out to the researchers. So they will receive the invitations and they will accept them. And once they're accepted, they can be used by the interoperability uploader process. And we require the researchers to accept them because effectively that's giving permission to you to upload records on their behalf. And it's worth emphasizing here because we're all trying to make sure that we minimize the reporting burden. All the researchers need to do is, and you'll see this in the demo, is open an email, click a link and say, yes, this is me and associated with my account. So there's no further reporting work that they have to do. Once that's in place, it allows you to add outcomes on their behalf, even where you don't know the grant that had funded the research. Now, to ensure timely acceptance, we recommend that you send your own preparatory emails to tell the researchers you're going to be invited to accept a researcher record. And these emails should explain why you're doing this for, to reduce the reporting burden, that it's granting permission to you to do this activity on their behalf. It's a one-time task of accepting the invitation. All that a Researchfish account holder has to do is, as part of the process, log in and accept the invitation, and encourage them to do things like check their spam folder in case they haven't seen the email. Now, our product documentation, we've got example templates that you might want to consider, so you don't have to remember and write that all down. We've got this nicely documented and some example templates that you can use. Okay, so at that point, I finished the introduction. I'm going to stop sharing. And I'll quickly check in with my colleagues to see, have there been any questions that you think we need to answer before we go into the process, into the live demo? We will come back to questions at the end, but I want to make sure that we do have time to see the capability in the platform, because it helps to make it real. And if we're all okay, then I will continue. So hopefully I'm now sharing Researchfish interface as usual. Just bear with me while I get everything set up. Okay, so what we're looking at here is I actually need to look at a different window. Okay, let's do that. Right, okay. So through this demo, I am going to be showing you the experience both as a research office administrator and as a researcher. So I'm kind of logged in as two different people in two different browsers. So this is looking at Researchfish as though I was a member of I was a research office administrator. And when you log in, regardless of whether you've got the free or the paid for subscription, you will find a series of menu navigation entries, items around the interoperability process. So again, remembering the workflow we're going to do, we're going to start off by creating the researcher records, having a researcher accept those, and then with that researcher record in place, we can use the interoperability process to add publications on their behalf. So this is a screen that allows you to see the researcher records you've already created. And as you can see, some have already been created and sent as a result of other webinars. Some have been accepted, some haven't yet been accepted. And this gives you an ability to resend unaccepted invitations, either individually or in bulk. Now, in the assumption that you've got quite a lot of researchers, you are typically going to do this process in bulk. And so there is a bulk upload mechanism which allows you to download a template, and then you can populate it and upload it into Researchfish. So I'm going to, in true Blue Peter fashion, which means something to our UK colleagues, basically here's one I prepared earlier, and despite having previously navigated to the right page, I am not looking at the right page. So let's find my way to the right area of my file store. So I'm now going to open a spreadsheet. I'm going to just open it so we can look at it, and you'll understand, and then talk you through what it is that we are using as data to create these researcher records. So it's relatively straightforward. Obviously, there is some information about the person. The really important thing is to have this ID, because this ID is going to be used when we come to the upload of publication and other records. This is how we're going. This is one of the ways in which we're going to make sure that we find the right person within Researchfish who's published this. We also have a start and end date for their employment. The start date is mandatory. The end date is optional. These are for some future plans we have around this capability. You can find information in this documentation tab down here that will help you understand which fields are mandatory and which are optional. So if I now upload this, you will see that, in fact, I have purposefully made this. I've got some problems in here. I've got a legal date. I've got a missing email address. So let's go through the process of uploading and actually see how that works. So if I now upload it, we'll do some validation in the product, and it will tell me where there are problems. So it will tell me that there's the date was invalid, there's a missing email address. This one was fine. Now I'm going to, rather than just go and fix those, which would be the easy thing to do, I'm just going to create one new researcher record invitation. And actually, I'm going to do it via the user interface. And the reason is that these researcher records, when you upload a spreadsheet with lots of them, it's a queued process. so it goes into a queue with lots of other processes we're doing, and I don't want to delay in the demo. So I'm just going to create a new record here. I am going to need to access that spreadsheet that I just had open, so I'm going to open it.
Colin,
Yes,
I'm
hello.
sorry. We have one request. Is it possible to make the screen a bit bigger?
Yeah, I'll zoom in. Let me see if I can sort that out.
Thank you.
So let me see if I can just zoom in. Let me move that out of the way. That's probably a bit much. Okay, and I'll hide the navigation information. So in this case, I'm going to create a researcher record for one of my researchers. I'm going to give them an email address, which is, so this is an email obviously just for the purpose of the demo, to make sure that the invitation actually comes to me, but you would use their email address. And this can be their email address that you normally use. It doesn't have to be in any way associated with their Researchfish account. It's just an email that will reach them. The internal ID is, as I say, this is the ID that we need to know as part of then the process that we follow from here onwards. This may well be an ID that's come from HR of the system, or you may create your own brand new ID, which is also fine. So if I now save this, assuming I haven't made any problems, this now tells me a researcher record was successfully created. And if I scroll down, I can see that we have a new role here, Tracy Emin, and the status is invited, but not yet accepted. Okay, so now I am going to go to my email, and hopefully I will have received an email. Go. Just going to open this and bring this onto screen. So I've received an email. This has some text to explain that this would obviously be your name as a research office administrator, explain about the invitation, it explains why, and it has a link for them to use to confirm the acceptance of the invitation. Now, just before I accept that, I'm going to go and look at the account for this researcher. So the My Awards page, which is the dashboard for researchers, you will see the only thing listed here is their award. And if we come and look in their personal portfolio, you will see that at the moment they have no publications or other outcomes associated with their award. And that obviously, and that also means, I will just confirm it, that if you go and look at the specific award that they're holding, there are no outcomes attributed to this award right now. So I'm going to log out and then find that email. Which is here. And I'm going to click on this link. And this is a very common workflow that we have in Researchfish, often used when researchers receive invitations to accept new awards. Now, I already have an account, so I'm not going to create a new account. So I am going to find my account to log in as. So it's not that, it is a different account. I'm going to log in. And I have a very straightforward little message to explain again what was said in that email about the purpose of this. And there's nothing for them to do now. That's done. There's nothing else that the researcher will do around researcher records. If they go to their My Awards page, they will see the researcher record listed, because it's possible that a researcher could have multiple researcher records. So we do make them available to the researchers so they can be aware of them, but there's no reporting that they can do against them. Okay. So So let me find my slides again quickly, just to remind us where we have got to. So we've just run the workflow, which was to create a researcher record, send the invitation, and it's been accepted. So now we're at the point whereby we're looking to create a spreadsheet of the publications and other outcome types to be uploaded into Researchfish. Now, some aspects of this will be very dependent on your system. If, for example, the award references that you use in your other systems, so Chris system, if they're identical to the award references used in Researchfish, then there's no matching to do. But if there are differences, and they may be just little things like changes in punctuation, there would need to be some reconciliation between those two. So there's a fairly sort of an aspect of some spreadsheet manipulation to have to do there. And I'm not going to show that here, but obviously our customer success team will be happy to help you with that and help you work out what you might need to do in your particular situation. And as I've mentioned, we have some documentation, and it's worth saying that this system that we're seeing will work with any source of publications. It's at the end of the day, it's a spreadsheet which could be populated from anywhere. But if you happen to use Pure as your Chris system, on the Pure website, on their help system, there is a detailed explanation of the reports that you would use to help to export the information to make it suitable for importing into Researchfish. So that would just make this particular step relatively straightforward. So now what we're going to do is we're basically going to see the upload mechanism and see how that then works. So I'm going to now move on to the interoperability uploader. And again, it's a similar process in that you would download a template, populate it, and upload it. And again, I have produced a template spreadsheet ahead of time. So it is this one. And again, before I actually upload it, I am going to open it so we can just review it and understand what we're looking at here. So Excel is just opening the background, I hope. I've got I see why it wasn't working. I had a cell open. Excel won't open a file if you're partway through editing another file. So how do we read this then? So again, as with the other template we've used to create researcher records, there's documentation in here. There's some README instructions. There's a list of all the different funders in Researchfish, and this is sort of dynamically generated when you download the spreadsheet. We keep this up to date. And then the documentation will help you understand the fields that you need to populate, which are mandatory and which are optional, and also the messages that you will get back at the end of the process. So let's come and have a look at the records. So I'm going to, through the demo, I'm going to upload 5 publications. So they all have DOIs. Now the top 2, you can see that they have information about the funder and the grant. So this is one of our test accounts within Researchfish. But the bottom 3, we don't have that grant information. What we do have is this ID. And if I go back to Researchfish, just get rid of that for now. If I go back actually to the researcher records, so the record that we've just created for Tracy Emin has got prod webinar RR05. And if we come and have a look, you can see that is the same ID used here. And so by adding this ID in to this spreadsheet against these DOIs, that is how we're going to get these 3 records added into Researchfish. These 2 will come in and they'll be associated with the grant. So I'll go back to the interoperability uploader. And I will choose a file. That one. And then I'll upload it. And you'll get a notification that this has now been queued. So the queue can take a few minutes to run. So I'm going to do a little bit of filling of time here. what will happen is I will get an email notification when the queue is processed. And that might take up to 5 minutes. I'm hoping it won't take quite that long. To explain what's happening, so as part of uploading this information, we will do some error checking to make sure, and we'll cover a number of different errors, making sure that the researcher record exists, if it's being used, to make sure that and we'll do lots of validation to make sure that we don't create duplicates. So as we do for many other processes, because it's quite possible that these publications have come in through other harvesting or other mechanisms, we don't want to create duplicate records, so we do a fair amount of management of that. When the email, so if I come and look in my downloads now, you will see that it knows that I've done an update, and it has said we will shortly give you back some feedback for you to be able to review. So I haven't yet had the email, and so what I'm going to do is I have an example from a previous webinar. So which one is it? Prod. So I think it's this one. You see, so it says webinar feedback, and this is what you will see in when you download the spreadsheet. So I realize the comments have been made about my screen might be tricky to read. So in this particular case, actually quite similarly, we uploaded 2 records where we had grant attribution information and 3 records where we didn't, but we knew the researcher record. This spreadsheet has got lots of other fields, some of which are optional, that can be added as part of the upload process. And then towards the right-hand side, we will get feedback information about whether or not there have been any problems. So if I keep going, it's resolved the name of the publication, and then we will see whether or not it's been added. So for example, you can see in this particular case, 4 of the records were created and attributed, fine. The last one was not, because, or the first one in the spreadsheet was not, and that's because it was already in the system associated with the researcher and this award. And so if we'd added it, we would have created a duplicate. Okay, I'm just doing a little refresh on my email. I'll come back and see whether or not the upload has finished and been processed.
Colin, sorry to interrupt.
No, a question is good at this point.
Oh, and Gavin's actually replied in the chat, but worth saying as well. So with increased traffic, will the upload take significantly longer than 5 minutes moving forwards?
So no, but I mean, it is the case that at any point when there's heavy load on the system, processing can take longer. But one of the things that we do is at points of heaviest load, because we're a SaaS platform running on cloud infrastructure, we can scale up the platform very straightforwardly.
Yeah. If I could, just as we're talking about this, just sort of quickly, one of the biggest points is that we empty out the queue to start processing about once every 2 minutes. And so depending on when your request goes in, it might take up to 2 minutes before it starts. Then once it starts, the key limiting point is going to be the external APIs. So obviously, if you have a very large file, it's going to take a while to run through there. So the API traffic can build up, which is one of the reasons why during the busiest periods of the year in the UK multi-funder submission period, we have this disabled just because of the volumes of data that do go through. But outside of those very high periods of activity where there's lots of calls to those external APIs, you really shouldn't notice anything very much of a significantly longer period. Hopefully. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Willing my email to go ping. It has refused to go ping at the moment. What happened last time, I think, was that I got halfway through showing the results of a previous interoperability and then got a notification. So I think I'm going to do the same and hope that will force the demo gods to start behaving. So as a reminder, what we've done, let me come back to the PowerPoint. What we've done here is we've run the upload process. We're waiting to get the feedback to see how successful it was and see if we need to do any adjustment. And as part of this process, outcomes should be added to Researchfish associated with awards where we have that grant information, the grant attribution information. Where we don't and where we're using researcher records, instead, it will be linked to the researcher's personal portfolio, and they'll be able to do the attribution themselves. So
We've had another question, Colin, in the meantime.
Somebody's looking to help me with lots of questions.
Is it important to add other data to the publications other than DOI or PubMed ID?
So it's not required. It's something that certainly you can add if you wish to, but it's not required. But if it is added, obviously, then it's retained within Researchfish. Gavin, would you like to say something further?
Yes. So those are only there in order to help you. So as Colin said, there's no requirement to add them in. If you add the bibliographic information, then what we'll do is we'll check in terms of what comes back from Crossref or PubMed or DataCite, and then we'll indicate to you if it's different to the bibliographic information that you've put in. And if it's sufficiently different, we'll say, hang on a minute, you might want to check this first. So that's the main use case. And then there's a few things around sort of what the ID is in your system. And that's only there to give you a placeholder so that you can more easily tie everything back into your system. So some universities ask for that to be put in to help as part of their internal processes, but you don't need to add anything in apart from either the researcher record or the funder and the funding award reference, and then the unique ID, which is either PubMed ID, a Crossref, and DataCite DOI. So that's it.
Okay, great, thank you. I do want to leave time for questions. I haven't seen how many we've got, but we certainly had quite a lot last time. So I'm going, oh, here we go. There we go. Right, finally. So you will get an email that informs you, as this is you as a Research Office administrator, you will get an email that informs you that the upload has completed and you can see the results in My Downloads. So if I now come to My Downloads and refresh, this will go from pending to ready, so I can download it. And open it. Sorry about the slight formatting challenges. Sometimes we do get some long responses back. I don't know if that's going to do enough to change it. The important thing is, let me just widen the key cells that we need to look at. So this is the same structure that we've previously used. So we still have the information about the DOI. And as you can see, for these first two items, we did have information about the funding, but these next three, we don't. And so if we scroll across, we can see whether we've been successful or not, and all of them have been successful. As mentioned, that isn't always the case. There will be cases where, for example, we take steps to reduce duplicate prevention. So now I'm going to go back to my account as Tracy Emin. And if I just refresh this, I'll just go to my personal portfolio. I can now see 5 publications have been added. So these are the publications that we've uploaded, and you can see that each of them indicates how it's been added. So this is shown all the way through Researchfish for any outcomes that are added, whether it's added by the person themselves or a research team member or a delegate, or if it's added via harvesting mechanisms, and also if it's been added by an organization, their research organization on their behalf. And if I come back to the award and I come and have a look at the details of the award, I will see 2 publications have been added. So if the researcher needed to do further attribution, they can do so very simply at this point. If they wanted to also indicate that this particular award had funded this piece of research, they would be able to do so here and via various other mechanisms. Okay, I've got a couple more slides to show before we go to Q&A. So just if you could just bear with me a second whilst I switch and bring up the slide deck. So hopefully that's showing the main slide again. I'll skip through the slides we went through to get to the end, just to do the last bit. So we completed the live demo. So further information. So one of the many pieces of work we've done over the last year or so is modernizing our help and knowledge base infrastructure. So we have a new help site, which we announced and launched a few months ago now. So this now has a very comprehensive, a pair of quite comprehensive documents, one that's the end-to-end through the whole process that I've just done from start to finish. And then a second, so that's the top one. And the search mechanism works very well. If you just search for interoperability or research a record, it's very easy to find this or navigate. And then there's one which follows through the process, the little mini workflow that I went through, which is creating the researcher records. That has email templates as a potential starting point to support you in terms of thinking about the communication you will want to do to your researchers. And as I mentioned, if you are using Pure as your quiz system, there is on the Pure website, there is an end-to-end workflow again, with specifically instructions on how you use Pure's export mechanism to pull data out of Pure in a better format to feed it into Researchfish. If you've got a paid subscription, then obviously our customer success managers will be very happy to help you, but the help documentation is obviously available to everybody. We have a recording of the last webinar already on our Researchfish YouTube channel. We'll put the new one up. So that means you'll have two webinars that are sort of an end-to-end demo with Q&A. The Researchfish client support elsevier.com email address is also there. And then just before we get to Q&A, I'm just going to wrap up by, again, thanking you for your attendance. As mentioned, there will be a post-webinar survey. Alex, are you going to pop that into chat or shall I do so? Yeah, we'll get that popped into chat. We'd love to get some feedback to find out whether we covered what you hoped to cover. Did we leave you with any questions? What could we do better? If you want to be set up with one of the free RO Lite accounts in Researchfish, you can leave your details there, so a member of the team can follow up with you. And if you'd like to find out more about the benefits of the administrator subscription, you can again leave your details here so that a member of the team can follow up with you. And that is that from me. So if I can now just stop sharing and we can return to Teams and look through to see the questions that we haven't yet answered. And thank you, Alex, for posting that form. Okay, so if I scroll back to the top of the meeting chat, so we've got the meeting chat and we've got the Q&A. So we just see, I saw one message go into the meeting chat by Daniela. If there is more than one person that should support the researchers, should we ask for individual accounts for Researchfish, or is it only one organizational account? Right, no, you would ask for individual accounts for each person who's supporting the researchers. Okay. It looks like we've covered the questions that went into the meeting chat, but we do have the Q&A. Now, last time I was terrible and broke etiquette, and I did the Q&A from the most recent rather than the furthest back. So can I just make sure that I can see two questions. Are we seeing the same? Okay. So Michelle Lucas asked, to confirm the internal ID is the ID internal to our institute, not internal to Researchfish. Yeah, I think the answer there is yes. It's an ID for your institute. You don't need to worry about whether if you use the ID of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it doesn't matter whether any other research organisation is also using that ID. There won't be a clash there. And it's worth saying that this information you're putting into Researchfish, I don't think I actually said this at the time, but this information you're putting in Researchfish belongs to you. So it's only you who get to see and control it. It's not shared out to funders. It doesn't go to any other research organisations. It's your information, because we appreciate it's personal information about people's employment status and their email addresses. So it's only managed and it's privileged to you. The second question from Marie Randall: what type of data information can be uploaded? So it's publications primarily that have either a Crossref DOI or a PubMed DOI. But last year we extended the integration to support DataCite DOIs. And so if your organization is supporting DataCite DOIs, we can upload those records of a variety of types. So actually in the product documentation, there should be a table of all of the DataCite subtypes. But in short, they are audiovisual and image outputs, datasets and software. And we map those onto various of the common outcome types in Researchfish. So we have for example, we have a software and technical products outcome type. We have a research data sets, databases and models outcome type, and artistic and creative outcomes as a third one. And we map those onto those. And publications, obviously, if DataCite DOIs are associated with publications, they will go into the publications common outcome type. Have I caught all the questions? Okay, yes. I guess I'll just ask if, obviously, any further questions. We've still got time. Alex, Claire, or Gavin, is there anything else you would like to add at this point? But if not, I think we're pretty much done. So we will say thank you.
I think the only thing I was going to add is I'll drop the link to the help site into the chat as well, because just to note, it's publicly available, so you can go and everyone can go and have a look without having a Researchfish account already.
Right. Yes.
And the idea, go ahead.
I've just seen that actually Michael has asked a Q&A. Do you have any expert tips on getting more data through the RO interoperability uploader? Anything to look out for on, say, UKRI and other larger funders? Gavin, I can't think of anything that's specific other than just, use of valid data. I can't think of anything.
Yeah, so really that is the main thing. So I think it's worth looking through, if you're uploading information relating to grants, it's worth looking at the information in Researchfish and looking at the information that you have and trying to match some of those things up. So you might have an extra space in front of a grant reference, and that's going to cause that sort of failure. So it might be worth a little bit of a reconciliation, because the information in Researchfish is how the funders think of the reference for the grant. And so in your system, depending on how it's arrived there, it might be a little bit different. Now, you can do that prospectively, or you can do that retrospectively after you've made an upload, because if the award reference doesn't match one in Researchfish, you'll get an error message on that, and so you might sort of fix it as you resolve as you go. So I think that's the biggest tip, because you should know the DOIs of the things in your repository, the PubMed IDs of those things. It's the funding references where there's often, for various reasons, a little bit of a challenge in getting the form exactly right.
Thanks, Gavin. And actually, we've had another question come in from Busmaha. I hope I've said your name correctly. Is this exercise related to the submission period, or can it be done all year round? So it can be done all year round, but Gavin made reference earlier to the fact that we do actually disable it just for a part of the UK multi-funder submission period, because it does put quite a load on the system. It is making API calls and to external services. So we need to make sure that we behave nicely with those external services. We don't overload them. So it's turned off for, if I remember correctly, something like the last 3 to 4 weeks of the submission period. But other than that, it's available all year round. And it is worth saying that Researchfish is available all year round. So researchers don't have to wait until they get to they get asked to complete their submission. They can go into Researchfish at any time and complete submission. And in fact, we run a survey to get feedback from researchers after our busy periods, and quite a lot of people left feedback that suggests that isn't commonly known. So I mentioned that in case it's part of your conversation with researchers. If you want to emphasize to them that they can do that, please feel free to do so. But yes, they can enter data whenever they want into Researchfish. The important thing at the submission period is when they get to a point of completeness and then say to their funder, this is complete and correct. Yeah, okay, you're very welcome. Okay, I think we've got all the questions then. We've covered all the questions. So once again, just to say thank you very much from me and my colleagues for your time. Do please look for, you'll get an email, I think, with a follow-up. It will have a survey link. We'd love to get your feedback. And also, if you want to find out more, if you want to be set up with a free light account to be able to take advantage of researcher records and interoperability, please do get in contact. We'll take you through a minimum verification process, because clearly we don't want to let anybody just pretend to be from a university. So we do have a verification process, but we'll get you set up in short order. Great. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.